Dr. Norrholm, in this article that you wrote, I read it on Raw Story. I'm not sure where it was first published. You argue that you're talking about the political parties and how we can't compromise anymore, and that basically the GOP has morphed into a cult. I'm literally say that, but I think that there's an element of it seems to me like you're suggesting that. If that's the case, what do we do about that? How do we interact with family members, friends who have become cult members, who have come under the sway of Donald Trump or of the larger cult, the white supremacist cult, for example, the white nationalism thing?
Yeah, if you think about cults in general, obviously there are lots been written about it, and cult psychology has been studied for decades, and that's a lot to discuss. So I'm just going to boil it down. If you think about the cult experience, you're talking about a reality that is driven by the leader of the organization or the cult, and then is perpetuated by the followers. And usually there is some central doctrine to the cult theology, which is, we will follow this leader who will take us to greener pastures. And in cult history, those greener pastures have been a heavenly destination, something in the afterlife. They've been, riches and prosperity here on the human plane. And so there's been some promise of a happy ever after by the cult leader. And that's going to depend on what the cult leader is professing and what the members are subscribing to. So what we're seeing now is really the evolution of a major political party. So as I mentioned in this article, there was a time not too long ago when the two major political parties had fundamental differences but could meet in the middle. There were differences over how much the government plays a role in your daily lives and how much the government should support individuals who need help financially and in other ways, and how much should be left to the individual to provide for themselves and to be a self-starter in some way. So there were areas where a compromise could be reached between these two ideas. But what has happened over the last 7 years now is this evolution into a cult-type organization where there's no longer anchors and links to what's happening in the real world, and everything is happening within this cult-like bubble where the narrative is written by the leader and sycophantic followers that are in his leadership structure, so that there's less and less connection to what is really happening. And so I describe this in terms of when somebody is in a cult, for a long time, it was thought that cult membership was somehow robotic or automatic, and people were brainwashed and then became in a zombie-like state, and they were in this cult until they could be broken out somehow. But what more recent research has shown is that there is a volunteer aspect to being in a cult. There is more decision-making by the person to engage in the cult situation than was previously thought before. And so what you're seeing, whether it's, members of Congress who are Republican or identify as Republican, are skewing more towards cult-like thinking and defending the single person, the leader of this organization, and not the objective evidence, the legal evidence, the evidence that's available on video that's really indisputable, but still adhering to the logic and narrative that exists within the cult bubble.
Right. So we just have a minute left. How best do we approach friends and family to pop them out of this cult?
I think it really is a matter of driving home the objective facts and showing that the cult narrative is wrong. So I think 4 indictments back to back to back helps to change that narrative. Mm-hmm. I think being found civilly liable for rape, these 2 impeachments, eventually the evidence becomes so great that the majority of people within the cult have to say, wait a second, something is not adding up here. So if you can aid in that discussion to help people be more receptive to objective information and to say, I know what you're hearing, but try to listen to it from this perspective.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It seems sometimes that they're impervious to facts, but Maybe if we could remind them of what life was like before the cult, too, would that help?
That would help, and I think you'll see some of that as there are tangible ramifications and consequences for the cult behavior in the last several years.
Makes perfect sense. Seth D. Norrholm, PhD, Wayne Medicine is the Twitter handle. Dr. Norrholm, thanks you so much for dropping by.